All right, welcome to the video. Today, I am talking about the one thing that every podcast needs to do in order to be successful. And this is something that a lot of people don't seem to understand. So I think you're going to get a kick out of this. I'm going to give you exactly what that is right at the beginning of this video, but then I'm going to give you a lot of examples and ways that you can utilize this in order to create a successful show. Now, who am I and what am I doing here? I am Tom. I go by the name Robots. This is the Robots Radio channel. And Robots Radio is a podcast network. It's one that I've started. I launched it off the backs of some very successful shows that I do, like the Fallout Lorecast and the Elder Scrolls Lorecast. And I regularly consult with our members, our Rocket Club members who sign up as part of our network, and I help them get their shows launched as well. And so I have a little bit of experience understanding what works and what doesn't. So if you find this information valuable, then make sure you subscribe and you come back for more. Also, if you want to learn more about the stuff that we do at Robots Radio, robotsradio.net is the website. I wrote a book. There's a mentorship program called the Rocket Club. There's all that stuff. But let's get into it. Today, I'm pulling over... here we go. I'm going to pull over some notes here and be writing out some notes as we go through this. So, what am I talking about? What is the thing that most shows miss out on and why they aren't more successful than they currently are? And that is perceived value. If there's one thing that your show is missing, it is perceived value. Now, let's get into the details on this because it's not just value, it's perceived value. Because this has everything to do with how the audience perceives your show and the value that you're supplying to them. So, for example, one of the main problems that many podcasts have is that they create a format where it's a few people talking about whatever the topic of the day is. And the reason why many shows do this is because there are other successful shows that do this as well, and they hear and listen to those shows, they become fans of those shows, and they go, well, I could do that, so I'm going to get together with my friends and start a show that does that. Now let's go through the steps of thinking about this. If you and your friends think, oh, that's easy, I can do that, then anybody listening to your show is also going to think, oh, that's easy, I can do that. So there's not a whole lot of perceived value in the thing that you're supplying. Also, the reason why those other shows are successful is either they started early enough when there wasn't a lot of competition and people started listening for a while, like a decade ago, or they already have perceived value in some other way. So the first way that they might have perceived value is that they're just bringing fame from some other location, some other place. They're notable people in the video game industry. Maybe they're already part of a studio and people know who they are, or maybe they're part of the journalism side of things and people know who they are. If you don't have that, then starting a show where you are hanging out with a bunch of your friends talking about something has very low perceived value because you're not supplying anything beyond what anyone else feels like they could probably do also. So let's move on to some ideas here about ways that you can provide perceived value if you're not already famous, and most of us aren't. The first way is in supplying knowledge. And knowledge has worked well for my shows, being that they're lore shows, things like the Fallout Lorecast, talking about the stuff going on in the world of the games that people didn't already know about. I'm supplying knowledge. But knowledge doesn't work well by itself, or it's very limited, I guess you could say. Think about the most boring documentary you've ever watched. That's what you get when it's just knowledge. Knowledge without emotion, knowledge without entertainment doesn't really lead to a whole lot. It's very limited. So then there's entertainment, right? So knowledge and entertainment work well together. Entertainment can be done by itself. There's limitations on that as well, because if you're doing a show that is simply entertaining, whether it's comedy or a story and voice acted and all of those kinds of things. The problem with it only being entertaining is that you are now competing with every other podcast out there that is just only supplying an entertainment value thing. So knowledge can be very niche. It's very, very focused, but it can be too dry. Entertainment by itself is too wide. There's too many other options. So you have to combine the two, or at least one of the best formulas is combining the two. And I'm going to add another one here that I've been more turned on to lately because of the way other people have used this and the value that I've learned this has. And that is novelty. And novelty can be lots of different kinds of things. Novelty means you're doing something distinctly different and unique in a very interesting, notable way. So, for example, in the video game realm, if you were doing, say, a Fallout podcast and you wanted to do novelty, one way to bring that novelty would be to talk about things you can do in the game and things that you tried doing that nobody else has ever done. So I think about YouTube channels where they're like, I beat the game with only using this one, super dumb weapon or whatever. Is it possible, right? That kind of thing. So if you put the time into trying that out and then talking through it and how you did it on a podcast, that has novelty value, or at least perceived novelty value. Now, another detail here is that each of these things take time and effort and maybe money in order to create, which makes them more difficult to replicate. So if something appears to be difficult to do, then it may also have higher perceived value. If something appears easy to do, lower perceived value. Now, that doesn't guarantee that just because you did something that was harder, that you're going to have a successful show or that it will be interesting or entertaining in any way. But if you are not doing this, then you're probably limiting the growth of your audience. So my next recommendation is when you are deciding what show to do or how to evolve your show, shoot for all three of these. Do all three because they bring value together. Even though you want to focus on all three, it doesn't mean that you don't want to primarily focus on one above the others and sprinkle in some of the others. So let's talk about some knowledge-based shows here. So knowledge focused would be things like lore shows, history shows, how-to shows about how to do something, helping other people learn how to do something. Anything focused on learning would be a knowledge-focused show. So when you're focusing on knowledge, sprinkle in some other stuff, some other entertaining bits, add some extra charisma to it, make things presented in a fun way, use sound effects, be fun. Focus on that stuff. Also, you can add a novelty to something that's knowledge focused by talking about stuff that otherwise people wouldn't have known, little known things, or presented in a really fun and interesting way. So for example, if you're doing a knowledge show that's like about history, then add some sound effects in the background that make it feel like you're in the location you're talking about. That adds some novelty and entertainment to it. So if you're focusing on entertainment, I can't spell here, entertainment, then that would be shows like audio dramas, let's play type shows, real play, RPG type shows like Dungeons and Dragons, comedy, those kinds of things. If you can engage people emotionally, the core to entertainment is engaging emotionally. If you can engage them emotionally, but also teach them something they didn't know while doing that. So for example, if you are doing an audio drama, setting it in a setting, I guess you could say, where it would be interesting to learn more about that setting, now does a little bit of both of those things, right? Novelty would be creating a story that nobody's done before because that makes it interesting. All right. Now, the last one, novelty. What are some examples of that? Novelty stuff, it can be so much of anything. These are the crazy ideas that people didn't know that they wanted to listen to in a podcast form. But once they find it, they're like, oh, this is amazing. I love this. Little known info. Now that skirts the whole knowledge thing, but like really little known info would be very novelty. What if type shows, like what if you did this, and then actually taking the time to do it, that kind of stuff. I'm sure you can come up with other ideas on your own. Novelty is kind of the hardest one to come up with an idea with. It's a little bit difficult to market, but once you can grab an audience with novelty and it really entertains them and gives them information that they didn't know before, now you're onto something really potentially very successful. One last point before I wrap this up, and this might be the most important thing, is put the time into this. Put time and quality into your product. Just because you're doing these 3 things and you're focusing on this stuff doesn't mean that you are still going to hit the perceived value level of making somebody feel like, oh, this is something I'm getting that I couldn't do myself. You have to put in time and effort. And you have to focus on the quality of the show that you're doing. Anytime you do something and somebody listens to it, if they have a hard time getting past a certain quality barrier, and that usually is audio, but it also can be the format of the show, those kinds of things, then you're probably missing out on audience. I hope you guys have found this useful for today's talk. I will be doing a lot more of these on this channel, so make sure you subscribe. Shoot me your questions in the comments. I would love to answer them. And check out robotsradio.net for more stuff. I will see you on the next video, which is probably on the screen right now. So go check that out too. All right. See you guys later.